Welcome to the Rich Report, a podcast with news and information on high-performance computing. Today, my guest is from IPSoft. We have Jonathan Crane. Jonathan is the Chief Commercial Officer for the company. So, Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Rich. It's a pleasure.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for coming on today. So I thought, we should get better acquainted. IPSoft is a private company. It's time to make some noise out there. So I brought your slides up. Do you want to start with that?
Well, thank you again for the opportunity. Let me talk to you about IPSoft. We affectionately call ourselves IP because many people think of us as a technology that has not yet arrived, mostly because the large end players are still working with what we call scripted automation. We do things very differently here. Founding this company in 1998, we've really been built on a vision that the infrastructure of tomorrow will be managed not by people, but by expert systems. And what we've been able to do is to build that technology and to prove that to numerous companies around the world. We are a company that operates not only in the United States, but in Europe and Asia. We have substantial presence from a customer standpoint in all of those regions. And basically what we're doing is we're providing autonomic IT management as a service. And this really means that if you think about it in the simplest terms, what we're able to do is to take the routine functions that typically go wrong, instances of problems that come into your service desks, and are able to remediate those issues about 60% of the time, meaning no human intervention required. As you can imagine, this is a very different way than what has been the traditional method by which companies have been operating over the last 10 years, which has really been to try to find labor arbitrage or cheaper labor cost in order to manage their infrastructure and their environment. We've decided that there's a different way to do this, and that's to utilize the technology itself. If you go to the second slide, it probably best depicts this traditional IT support stack. You understand that, again, the cost of managing today's infrastructure has been greatly reduced. What's happened is the hardware and software costs have been collapsed by virtualization and cheaper footprints of hardware. Software has been made less expensive, and in fact, of recent days, has been what we call SaaS. And so software as a service changes the way in which you procure software. Now, even more so, comes cloud and cloud infrastructure opportunities, where once again, you're able to take down the cost of hardware and software. But what we haven't been able to really attack well is the whole aspect of the human costs of managing an increasingly complex information services platform. The more our information services platforms become more complex, filled more with applications and custom applications, the more it requires development resources, people of expertise to manage these environments. So while we thought we were really getting our IT management costs under wraps by virtualization and the changes of cloud, we're still dealing with this large-scale human management aspect. And so what we have done then is we've transformed this IT support through Autonomics. The use of expert systems, the lack of requirement of human touch in order to remediate some of these common instances, the ability to correlate those instances, to be able to build them into a problem management file, to be able to do change management in a disciplined fashion, to be able to do the kinds of things that lend yourself to an efficiency in managing your information services platform. That's what we've done by using the technology of Autonomics. And so we've been able to greatly shrink the amount of human costs associated with managing today's very complex information environments. If we look at our automation, one of the things we do is we build a dashboard to be able to show our customers. This dashboard is transparent. Our customers see the exact same dashboard as our technicians and our technical people who observe how the platform is operating. One of the things that we do is, as I said, we guarantee about a 50 to 60% autonomic resolution of your issues, but we've actually had customers who are able to get their processes and the management of their environments so that 80 to 85% of their environment is being able to be managed through the autonomics of the system. It's very obvious then when you begin to understand, if you can manage your complex environments in this fashion, you need less people to be able to manage it. But there's another piece of this that's very important. This is not about just people reduction. It's about the information flow that makes the people that are involved managing your environments that much more intelligent, being able to respond more readily, having the data that's available to them to be able to address repetitive problems. And what you then have is an operating environment that is more responsive to the business units in their own company, more responsive to their customers, able to resolve problems more readily and more professionally. And all the while, it's building an audit trail, so everything and anything being done in this environment is also being audited. The benefits here are numerous. One of the other things that we see is simply the replication of not only what was done, but the routining of what's done, so that it's done the same way. One of the things that we all know as humans, we tend to invent. And when we invent in managing operating environments for IT in particularly, invention quite often causes challenges and, in fact, gives us more work to be done than we thought. And so this, in a world of regulation and a world of compliance, enforces the way in which we're going to resolve and solve the kinds of issues that are constantly coming to us in this very complex environment. But one of the things that's very unique about IPsoft is many people think about, HP, IBM, BMC, Oracle, all of these very credible, we call them ITOM suppliers, CA, another one. These are all very reputable firms providing services and capabilities. Some of the startup companies like a ServiceNow, again, a credible entity. These players all have their own software to sell and or their hardware to sell. And so they've built packages to resolve certain areas of your information services platform, most of them with the intent of hopefully being able to sell you services in that regard. The people that are also hosting players like a Savvis or a Terramark or a Rackspace have the interest of not only supporting you in terms of your infrastructure, but also selling you the hosting space and or network space. The unique thing about IPsoft is we come with no bias relative to software. We come with no bias relative to hardware. And we come with no bias relative to location. We're agnostic in all those three important areas. This means that basically the infrastructure that you are now managing and the components of it from a hardware and a software and where it is you're hosted are not material to the ability to now manage this environment from one single pane of glass, one operating viewpoint that you're able to look into all of these disparate pieces. And as we talk about it, we talk about our depth and breadth. We list not only the kinds of companies that we support and the technologies we support, but we support a service desk environment, the network as well as the voice aspect of network, storage, the OS operating layers, virtualization, databases, middleware, applications, business logic, and security. In fact, we do them all. And this is a unique aspect of IPsoft. We see no one else in the marketplace who is this kind of pure play managed services provider who in fact has the depth and the breadth to manage the kinds of components we find in many of the companies out there today. What we have decided to try to do is to make our capabilities that much more usable. This past year, we started to deliver our autonomic environment as a platform. Think of it almost as a software, but a software with a corresponding service and support organization. So in this particular case, we can bring a IPcenter platform into a customer's environment and allow them to use this platform to begin to become the single pane of glass for their own internal uses. But we've now been able to enable companies to extend this platform, this set of services, out to their end users. So all of a sudden now, the service providers, the telcos, and companies that would like to extend services and capabilities to their end users now become platform users where they themselves are not only gaining these efficiencies and how they manage themselves internally, but they're also now extending this capability out to their customers as well. And as we look at the changing environment in the landscape out there, we're seeing more and more companies becoming service providers. And one of the more famous ones of recent date was McKesson, who basically decided to take their products and services out to the customer's location and embed them in their own service set of offerings. These are the kinds of companies that we believe will begin to use more and more of our services to not only make themselves more efficient, but also be able to extend this out to their customers. Again, all aspects of that platform are now extensible to their customers who now can utilize those environments. Again, with the idea that this is really about bringing down the costs, bringing up the efficiency levels, and most importantly, in today's environment, if we're thinking cloud, we're thinking speed. We're thinking a completely different time frame associated with provisioning and readiness. And when you think about that, you must have a corresponding connection with how you operate that environment. Because if on one hand you're able to provision quickly and be able to do all the things that we've talked about, but you can't operate and fix it, the frustration level only gets that much greater. So we think it's a combination. It's this new architecture being certified now by a service assurance, by an operations level layer that goes into how it is you're going to provision and support these types of complex environments, which are only being made that much more complex by now integrating the cloud. If you look at the autonomic governance framework, that's what we've talked about. It's really about this end-to-end automation. It's about algorithmically enforcing the process. It's one of the things we talked about, repetitive nature of how you want to do things. It's essential to a compliance-type environment. And again, it's the ability to take what customers typically today have to accumulate from, we've seen 12 to 15 tools at a minimum, some as many as 20 to 25 from all different vendors in order to get a common framework in order to manage their environments. This IPsoft opportunity then eliminates the need for all these different software packages, the custom integration required, the APIs and EBONs needing to be written, the maintenance fees associated with all these disparate pieces of software and capabilities. It now operates in one common framework. And here's the great news about the company. We do not, when we enter into an environment with our customers, force them to do what we call rip and replace. We're not out there to try to get them to throw away all the hard work they've done, for example, in building a ticketing system with NetCool. That's fine. We'll use the NetCool ticketing system as a part of our overall framework. We have an integration package we've already done. Now it becomes a part of the way we work. If you're an OpenView fancier and you believe that HP has some good capabilities and you've been working with them for a while, fine, we'll integrate them into our environments. It's an important part of our ability. It's not rip and replace. It's really about entering into the environment and giving the customer a completely different view upon his entire information services platform. So you get the benefit of cost reduction. You get the availability of your infrastructure becomes that much more available because it's working that much better. You get the ability to quickly scale in terms of whatever you want to add to this platform. We're not, in fact, stopped by large-scale implementations. Today, we manage 50,000 servers as one of our large customers, 25,000 separate instances of database, multiple CMDBs. None of this causes our system or any problem in our capability. And then one item that I always want to introduce, and then we'll wrap up here quickly. When we think about implementing the IDLE standards, and everybody is looking at these standards now, one of the important aspects of the new service operating environment and the criteria you're to measure yourself against is something we call continuous service improvement. The continuous service improvement run by us is directed at a customer's efficiency. Working collaboratively is how we get the kinds of very lofty numbers we described. When we talk about doing 60 and 70, maybe even 80% efficiency with no human intervention required, it's because we're constantly looking at the types of issues and instances that occur in an operating environment, and we're taking those and beginning to categorize them and translating them into what we call our virtual engineer, our automatas. And these virtual engineers now attack those kinds of instances that have been identified and categorized. Working together with our customers and the companies out there, we're able to very quickly bring those kinds of solutions. It so much speeds up the process that when we compare ourselves to any other vendor who does automated scripting, the comparison is minutes to build a virtual engineer versus days. So lastly, I would give you just some interesting statistics. We say this 60%, 56 to 60% of incidents resolved with no human intervention, 60% reduction in mean time to resolution. I have a long-standing history in MCI. We measured ourselves first on how fast we answered the phones. That was our first phase. The second thing we measured was how fast we were able then to respond. That was great. We continue to focus on that. But really, the customers today care about mean time to resolve. That's the criteria that you should be measured upon as a managed service provider. That's where we're able to shine because of the Autonomics resolution. Our satisfaction rate is over 90% with our clients. You can imagine driving down their costs, increasing their efficiency, and doing the things we did. From our standpoint, we're building now on 13 years of experience in building this automation base. Again, no one has been using Autonomics yet in their technologies. Our cost reductions are typically, we basically try to give a guarantee at a floor of 30 to 35%. And today we have almost 1.5 million devices under our management of the system. So in a very short, compressed time, Rich, I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. I'd love to entertain some questions from you.
Well, thank you for that, Jonathan. And I apologize, my leaf blower neighbor is at full blast here. So if you hear too much noise, I'll have to repeat the question. But I'm curious about how the expert system gets filled up, right? It needs a knowledge base in the system to work, right? Is this something that the client takes their IT guys and they do some kind of knowledge dump? How does it work?
That's an excellent question. What happens is this. We build our knowledge library based on the experience we have with all of our customers. So think about it in managing an Oracle database or any of the common kind of environments that you're supporting today. We've built a knowledge library of what are the kinds of instances, like a lock block, for example, that occur inside of an Oracle environment. What do you do to resolve that? We've mimicked engineers in responding to those kinds of problems and built a decision tree into our system that says that if you encounter this type of environment, here are the steps you need to take. What customizes that is the customer's decision on what are the escalation procedures, who do you need to make sure that you get approval from, and et cetera. And so we have a baseline of knowledge on how to deal with Oracle environments. That gives you off the shelf 30 to 35% ability to take the expert system and apply it against known Oracle issues. We then gain more efficiencies by working with the customers to determine what's special about your environment and what special escalation procedures do you require. We build those then in working with the customer. Again, our operations team also fulfills the engineering development role, and they provide the ability to quickly write new decision trees that go into this knowledge library. That's how our virtual engineer files get built. It's learning from the customer, what do they do, plus knowing what we've done in the past. When we put those two together, that's how the expert systems get smart over time.
So Jonathan is taking this from the perspective of the IT guy that has to normally do this manually. Are you replacing him, or are you just removing the mundane tasks from his daily work?
Well, the thing we focus on is we want to get mundane off of everybody's desktop, right? We want to get mundane out of everybody's managing a server environment or network or Cisco devices or whatever. We got to get that out of the way. Then as we gain more and more understanding of the operating environment, we start going up the stack. So clearly what we'll call level 0, level 1, those are the first areas. Then there's portions of level 2 that we can do. Here's the great part. Because the system does those kinds of things, it enables the person who's working that IT function to grow in his stature and his responsibility and value to his company. So to the extent that you can get rid of the routine, and that's typically the part of a company, high turnover rate, not necessarily great skilled, don't necessarily have long tenure and understanding of the operating nature of the company. Now we're giving that baseline is now systematized, and you've now elevated the team in terms of their knowledge of the environment, and they become really solution-oriented. We're giving them the data to really get at that. Now they're attacking repetitive problems, repetitive instances. And so really, when you think about the impact here, everything gets more efficient, everything gets better, and including the experience and the work, the type of work that the individual in IT is doing. Yes, there will be some net out of personnel, but it's, again, the difficult personnel to maintain and go higher because it's really the entry-level staff that has that high turnover. You're trying to develop a long-standing employee or a long-standing value asset for your corporation. This is a great way to do it.
So watching your description of how it works, Jonathan, is this mostly about keeping an existing system up and running, or is there a deployment and system management resource brokering aspect to this as well?
Well, as the IPcenter system now has evolved, we began really about managing the infrastructure as it stood today. But what we've now done with the new cloud environment emerging, what we've also figured out is that provisioning is an essential part of this environment. So we've built tools to provision. We've been primarily focused on provisioning a VM, virtualization slices. But we have now looked at memory, CPU, and other elements that are crucial to building up and tearing down a cloud-type environment. Think about it as fabric-based computing and the ability now to prescribe that in an organization. It needs some permission and escalation steps. There has to be some compliance relative to financial issues and et cetera. All of that is built into this. So we now have a BSS layer to what has always been an OSS management system.
Great. Well, kind of a wrap-up question here, Jonathan. How does a customer engage with IPsoft? Is it sounds like it's a kind of a service-heavy engagement, when you're filling up the knowledge base. But how do they kick the tires?
Well, it's surprising. We have most of our customers who respond back to us and say, boy, this looks really complicated. This is going to take me 18 months to, get really on. I got to change the way I do things. And we always say, no, stop thinking SAP. Start thinking about speed of utilization. Because we've done all the APIs, because we've done all the e-bonding, we're able to bring ourselves into a solution, a niche, or into a comprehensive package. We always recommend our customers, let's start with a piece. So we could go into database, we go into network management. Let's start there. Let's put in the capabilities in the system. If you want to run in parallel, we've done that with some of our customers. But at the end of the day, let's solve a problem you're trying to deal with. And from that, we can then build the platform out over time. That's been very successful for us. So it's not as complicated as people think. We do not require great amounts of hours of people to try to figure all this out. It's amazingly simple from a standpoint of implementation if we're focused on a particular one area. It's obviously more complex and challenging if we're going to take over an entire environment. But again, don't think of complex software integration. Think about this implementation in 90 days or less.
Well, terrific. Well, Jonathan Crane from IPsoft, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show today.
It's been my distinct pleasure, Rich. Thank you. And I didn't hear the leaf blower, so you were fine.
Terrific. Well, thanks. Okay, folks, that's it for the Rich Report. Stay tuned for more news and information on high-performance computing.